All right. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us tonight for the basketball preseason webinar. This season, obviously, as you guys know, is going to be a little different, but we're hoping that tonight will kind of help with give you some ideas of what we're actually going to be doing and some of the protocol that we have in place for COVID. If you guys are having in-person practices and trainings. So as Steve mentioned, this page, just real quick, is showing us the plunge is going to be all virtual this year. So make sure you get very creative. If anyone is friends with me on Facebook, you get to see my nieces and nephew hit me with water guns. I posted that today. So I did my virtual plunge already. So this is a chance for you guys to get really, really creative and an opportunity. If you don't like jumping in the bay, which I fully get, this gives you a chance to be a little creative about it and still plunge. So I'm going to hand it over to Mike Zarnowski, our VP of Sports, and Mike is going to go through the protocol for return to activities.
Okay. Thanks. So you can see here, hopefully everyone is familiar with Zoom. At this point, maybe more familiar than you care to be. But, if we certainly want conversation where we can, but we also expect, well, actually, we already are at 50 people. So we're going to ask to keep lines muted throughout. Please use the chat. Steve and Melissa will be monitoring that. And then when I hand back over to Melissa, I'll monitor it on her behalf. You can also, if you need to, raise your hand again. See this little panel that we've got here for raising a hand or whichever. You would just show participants. That should be a little option you have there. Also, we'll be utilizing the chat for some stuff that we've done in other web sessions as polls. So if you could have that available as well. We'll go through the protocols and talk at least a little bit about applying to your basketball program. Then Melissa's going to go through some stuff specific to the sports and additional information. Melissa and the basketball sports management team have done a remarkable job in creating some level 4, 5, and 6, 3, 4, and 5, whichever skills, higher level skills, since the unfortunate, hopefully everybody's aware of this already, the unfortunate situation is we're not going to be able to play basketball games, at least not in the foreseeable future. And again, as we go through the protocols, that'll make a little more sense. So we're not going to go through all the resources. You've seen all that before. They're there for you at the end, and then some open discussion. So the document you see here is our return to activities, or sometimes referred to return to play protocol. That has a lot more information. Please, we will send this to you with the follow-up from the session here. What we're going to cover here is just some highlights, but we'll send that to you when Melissa sends the slide deck as well. There's lots of stuff that's available on the Return to Activity site, and there's tons of links and so on through here. Also, all the videos, we're going to show a couple video or 3 videos tonight. They're all available through that site as well. So a couple things to keep in mind. As you are thinking through whether or not you can, or how potentially you would start up basketball, should you decide that you can, key thing is working with your area leadership, your area directors. Since the middle of March, when this all started happening, have been actively engaged, actively involved in preparing, and in some cases, some folks here, Jeff Hagan and some others, were involved with some of the decision making, as well as the overall area director group was involved with the decision making on some of this as we put the protocols together. They know much better, or they know very well what's possible, and they're going to be one of the gateposts, if you will, or that to verify or to say that yes, something can go forward. We're going to talk through the protocol here. what we're sharing with you is required. It's not a suggestion. It's not a best practice. It's not try to do this. It is required. That may well mean that you, because of the situation you're dealing with, your comfort level, the comfort level of your assistant coaches or other coaches or family members and athletes and such, it may mean that you can't start. Could also be you don't have an access to a facility, which we know is a major challenge right now for folks. That's okay. We do have some virtual options that are 100% online, and no one is saying you must start your basketball program. That's, again, a conversation to have with your area leadership and such. I don't know if you saw on that picture of the document, the most recent version is from October 30th. That's getting updated periodically as new information's available. So if anything new comes up, we'll send that to you, but it's also available at this virtualsomd.com return to play site. And again, you'll get the slides and have all those links there. As we're going through this stuff here, these additional requirements are in addition to the stuff that's always been required: athlete medicals, volunteer applications, so on down the line. They all still apply during this return to activity period, and they apply if you're doing virtual training. So if in a virtual training situation, you are leading a group of athletes through exercises and activities, and for that reason, you'll be, we require that the athletes have their medicals up to date, that all the volunteers have the certification and so on. So this is all in addition to that. We'll come back to the phase 1 stuff when we get to another slide. And again, this is an evolving process. Stuff is changing on a semi-regular basis. We also have to factor in requirements from the state government, and Governor Hogan implemented some new things a few weeks ago. I don't know anything, whether anything's going to happen soon, but that could change, in a week or two or whatever, based on the different situations that we're dealing with. So just know that it can be changing, and we'll keep you posted as best possible. Your area directors, again, will be the best, closest source of information for you, though. We have, in terms of helping with your athletes and your athletes learning and potentially their families learning about the protocols, there's 3 webinars that were done during the summer that are all still relevant. They are not repeats of each other. Webinar 1 and webinar 2 that are shown there are sort of back to back. They cover some different content, and then webinar 3 is sort of a review in a game show type of situation. So again, you've got the links there. Strongly recommend that you have your athletes or recommend that your athletes go and view some of these. Another thing that we definitely recommend too is utilize Zoom or some other online convening situation, and communicate with your athletes and families in advance through that. Having a team meeting ahead of time is a great thing to do. First, people get to see each other, which is something that can be very helpful. And I think most of you know I coach as well, and when we've done that with our track team on occasion, at least those who can participate in a web session have found that very useful. So, but that's also a good way to share information with your folks. Again, these protocols, they apply anytime and there's an in-person activity with athletes, whether you're talking practices, meetings, competitions, etc. And again, it's required. We look at the protocol that we have, which is it's specific to Maryland, but it's built on the nationwide protocol that Special Olympics International and Special Olympics North America has put forward. We look at that. We also look at either the state government requirements, or if a local jurisdiction is doing something special or is being more restrictive, whichever is the most restrictive set of requirements is what we're going to go by and what's going to be in place. And again, Jeff Abel and his team have been doing a remarkable job working with the area leaders to make sure everybody's appraised on that and kept up to speed. But that could change. And again, you know, we realize it's a challenging situation, and we're going to do the best that we can as we go forward. Then also that note of the school systems and such, just know that in some situations we're working with a third party, such as a school system, who they're really running the program on our behalf. There's no real funding or other stuff that's being used to support that. In those types of situations, they're going to follow the requirements for that school system or for that other group if there is some other third party that's doing it. So you may see some things that are being allowed, like on social media posts or whatever, that are a little different from what you may be operating under. That's to be expected. Again, depending upon what the school systems are dealing with. And our programs are in 21 of the 24 school systems. So you're going to see that, and we hope you see stuff on social media with that. So we have a 4-phase process or 4-phased approach. 0 is where we started at way back in March through the end of June, where nothing is going on. At this point in time, the entire state is in phase 1 for Special Olympics Maryland, and it's going to vary by county or by area, depending upon what you can do. So here in phase 1, that you can have your program operating with a maximum group size of 10 people, need to adhere to a minimum of 6 foot social distancing, physically distant throughout the entire time. There's no direct or indirect contact. Direct contact, we mean by that when one person touches another person. Indirect contact is when a person touches, say, a basketball, and then another person touches that basketball without it being disinfected in between. Neither direct nor indirect contact is allowed in phase 1, which is where we are right now. And then again, also no sharing of equipment throughout there in phase 1. For that reason, we can't really play games when you have to be physically distant, can't have direct or indirect contact. And so that's why we're moving forward with that. When conditions allow, and I'm not going to go through all the specs on how that changes, the area leaders know it. But when conditions improve to a certain degree, group size can go up to 50 people, maximum of 50 people. Again, the restriction from the state government may limit that. As in right now, there's a limit of no groups larger than 25. We're not in phase 2, but if we were to go into phase 2, we would still be restricted by that additional requirement. In phase 2, the physical distancing is still there, as well as the no direct contact requirement. So they still can't have athletes or individuals touching each other, but indirect contact can resume. You want to try to minimize that, but you can do that. And in both of those 2 phases, there's a screening process that we'll go through, need to take place. And then phase 3 is essentially when everything is pretty much back to normal. We don't anticipate that happening until best case scenario, and even that's hedging it, but best case scenario is the spring or the summer. Just from reality, we want to be optimistic, and you know, there's certainly good signs with vaccines and so on, but just the reality is it's just not going to be there for a while. But once we are back to normal, then we'll be in phase 3. Notice that we can go with the double-headed arrow there. We can go from phase 1 to phase 2. And in fact, in the fall and in the summer, we did have several areas move from phase 1 into phase 2. And we can also go the other way. And so I think it was either at the end of October or beginning of November, everybody came back to phase 1 because the conditions were spiking. There's a lot of things that go into the factoring phase 1 or phase 2. I'm not going to go into them all here. Your area leaders know that. But anyway, so it can move back and forth. Right now, though, everybody's in phase one. We note there that we've got a group size of no more than 10. It is permissible in some situations to have more than one group at the same facility. For example, and so in phase one, you could have two separate groups. A real world example, Montgomery County has is doing dryland training for their snowshoeing, and I think also their cross-country skiing folks at the same time, at the same location, but they're doing them as two separate groups of 10. In those situations, the groups need to be at least 50 feet apart, more if possible. And also they need to stay intact. In other words, it can't have somebody going from one group over to the other group and back. They need to be those groups of 10 and such. In basketball, well, we'll see if you have the luxury of being able to get indoors, and we hope folks will have that option. Just because of size and space that's available on a regulation basketball court, we're going to be limiting that, but it is feasible within an indoor situation where you could have more than 10 participants. Some of the gyms that have multiple courts and such would fall into that category. One other thing with this before we go to the next slide. With the maximum of 10 participants or maximum of 50 when we get to phase two, that includes everybody that is in that area. That includes your athletes, that includes your coaches, your unified partners, any additional volunteers, family members who maybe are hanging out there. It's for that reason that if you're indoors, we are saying that basically you can't have any spectators waiting for you or waiting or watching in the gym. They need to be outside because they're going to add to that maximum of 10 people in a group because everybody counts in that. Same thing goes, all those requirements there, physical distancing and no direct or indirect contact, certainly applies to athletes, but it also applies to the partners, to the coaches, assistant coaches, volunteers, applies to everybody. Okay, so with that in mind, what I'd like to do is just kind of a quick question here, and if you could put into the chat and do it to everybody so that we can see. Read each of those lines there and which of them would be permitted when we're in phase one. So just, you don't have to write them out, just I'm making this up. Is it A, C, D, and G? Just put those in once you've read. And we'll take a moment for folks to look through and see that. Which of those would be permitted when operating in phase one? And again, just type them into the chat, please.
From what I'm seeing, we are having a lot of identical answers, and I think the correct answers.
I believe we usually have the crutch of a poll to look at and can see, but yes. Okay, so great. C, D, and F, I'm almost certain are correct. A, definitely not, because again, they require touching. B, handing the equipment, it involves indirect contact. C, demonstrating from a distance, 8 feet, perfect. Yes, that's fine. Using poly spots to mark the ground. Not only is that permissible, that's a best practice, using some kind of marking for folks. One of the things that we found is without that kind of marking, not just athletes, everybody starts to kind of drift a little closer together and so on down the line because they lose track of that. So C and D definitely. E, throwing a football back and forth, just like throwing a basketball back and forth, indirect contact would not be permitted, even though they're 15 feet apart. F, shooting at an open goal would be fine. And G, because you have that coach there as a goalie, and you have to assume that he or she is going to actually act as a goalie there, that would involve indirect contact. So great.
Yeah, there were several individuals who put G, so I think that explanation that you gave there, Mike, was good. So thank you for that.
Okay. So here, looking down here, and a couple of these will take some thought. Which of these, actually, let's make this simpler. Ignore the question for a moment because it's less typing for you. Which of these would not be contributing to your group size? So if you're at phase 1, which of the people who are listed there would not be counted towards the 10?
Tina in with a first response. Good job.
Okay, she wins the prize. Steve, you take care of
As
that?
you have, Mike? Yes.
Yeah, it looks like everybody's getting it. F and H. Yeah, A, B,
Yep.
C, D, and E. We even specifically talked about that. F, they're in their car in the parking lot. They're not anywhere near it. That's fine. They don't count towards your 10. With G, they come in and they're close by. They're in that space. They would count towards your 10. That's why you're going to need to limit spectators or family members and such. And then H, if they're there, but they're, it says 50 meters away, you know, that's a distance. They're not really in that same space that you're in. And so they would not be counted in that number. So this is one of the things that I think you really should be doing ahead of time. And actually, I think it might be on one of the next screens. Yes, it is. Perfect. Is meeting with your coaching staff and your area leader to figure out specifically with the facility that you're using, what can you do and what can't you do? I am not going to read this to you. I don't expect you to read this while we're sitting here. I do expect you to read it when we send it out to you. This is also contained in the guide that we'll send as well. But some of the things just to notice here is, again, just highlighting prior to attendance, talking with your coaches, talking with your family members, with your athletes in advance. And you can take this slide deck here, not that it's the wonderful be all and end all of slide decks, but you can certainly adapt this and share the information. Again, the links are also available to the videos that we'll see momentarily. But key with this is think through it. We've got what is capable in terms of compliance, educating folks, preparing, and again, this is meeting ahead of time, making sure you've got your protective equipment and so on down the line. And then, actually, of the 4 things that are there, the only one is actually when you're in session, that activity. So again, read through that, and hopefully while we're going through here, this will highlight enough stuff that you'll get to know and get a feel for it. So with that, fingers crossed, these videos sometimes do and sometimes don't. This was working a few minutes ago. There we go.
In order to safely return to activity, Special Olympics recommends that participants wear a mask if on public transport, such as a bus, trolley, subway, or if carpooling with someone not living with them. If Special Olympics is providing transportation, face masks during travel and maintaining physical distance are required. Prior to entering any activity, practice, event, or gathering, all athletes, coaches, unified partners, volunteers, family members, and caregivers must participate in an on-site screening. It is important to take the necessary steps to create a safe on-site screening area. 1. Create a single point of entry. One entryway that allows participants to enter one at a time. Remember, we strongly advise outdoor spaces only in Phase 1. 2. Use chalk, tape, cones, or other markers to indicate what 6 feet or 2 meters looks like for physical distancing. 3. Make sure you have all the necessary supplies for a proper screening, which include temporal thermometer, pens, masks, gloves, disinfectant wipes or spray, hand sanitizer, COVID-19 Participant Code of Conduct and Risk Assessment Forms. Volunteers will fill out a monitoring form for each participant that passes through screening. The form includes the participant's name, contact info, temperature, answers to screening questions, and the outcome of the screening. For instance, can they participate or have they been isolated and sent home? Next, you will ask each participant the following required screening questions. We recommend using visual aids when asking the questions. 1. In the last 14 days, have you had contact with someone who has been sick with COVID-19? 2. Have you had a fever in the last week? Temperature of 100.4 degrees Fahrenheit, 37.8 degrees Celsius, or higher? 3. Do you have a cough and/or difficulty breathing? 4. Do you have any other signs or new symptoms of COVID-19? Fatigue, muscle or body aches, headache, new loss of taste or smell, sore throat, congestion or runny nose, nausea or vomiting, or diarrhea?
In the past 14 days, have you had contact with someone who has been sick with COVID?
Yes.
Yes, you have? Okay, so I'm gonna actually have you step down here.
If a participant answers yes to any questions, they must be isolated from the group, sent home, and instructed to contact their healthcare provider. Participants who are found to have COVID-19 symptoms must wait 7 days after symptoms resolve to return to activity, or must provide written proof of physician clearance to Special Olympics to return to activities. Participants who test positive or have COVID-19 must provide written medical clearance before returning to sport and fitness activities. After answering the screening questions, you will conduct on-site measurement of participants' temperatures using a thermometer, preferably a non-touch thermal scanning one if possible. If a thermometer is not available, you must ask participants to self-monitor and provide results of that monitoring. If there are any concerns about fever, temperature of 100.4 degrees Fahrenheit, 37.8 degrees Celsius, or higher, the participant should not be allowed to remain on site. If high, you may retest the participant after 5 minutes to ensure temperature is accurate. Record all names, results, and contact information using the template provided, and keep in case needed for contact tracing or reporting. For more information on Special Olympics Return to Activity protocol and safety guidelines, visit resources.specialolympics.org or consult your local program.
Okay. So again, as a reminder review, you've got the 4 questions: been in contact with anybody who's been sick with COVID in the last 14 days, fever in the last week of 100.4 or higher, cough or difficulty breathing, and then those symptoms that are there. One note with that, with those symptoms: if the individual has a chronic condition, I don't know, you have a coach who has arthritis or an athlete who has arthritis, their muscle aches and body aches is a normal part of their life. Myself, I have chronic sinus problems. I'm always going to say yes, that I have congestion or a runny nose. What we're looking for here are things that are different from what their normal is. So hopefully nausea, vomiting, and a couple of these other ones aren't normal for them. But if it's something that the athlete or the individual has as it's just part of their life because of their medical situations, that's okay. Otherwise, other than that caveat, they need to say no to all 4 of those questions. If they can't say no to all 4 questions, they would need to leave. And this is something where you do need to ask each practice, each time. It's not something they can email to you ahead of time. You need to do it in person. And then after you've gone through that screening, do the temperature check. One of the reasons why we say if it's above 100.4, give them 5 minutes to cool down and do a recheck. Depending upon where you're located, you can, it could be a long walk to get to the building, or where you're doing the checking, where you're doing the screening, or if they're hauling equipment for some reason or something like that, that can make their temperature higher and let them cool down for a bit. The other thing that we recommend as well, even though in the video it was nice in a pavilion and so on down the line, if you can do the check as close to or even in the parking area so that you can catch folks before they've gone very far. You can even, you potentially, if the situation allows, you could do it before they get out of their car. But if that's something that's feasible, that's advisable so that you don't have somebody coming in, then they need to get their stuff together and head back out and so on down the line. It's just much easier in general for that. So,
Mike, real quick, this is Steve. We have had one or two people with the question, knowing that this is an evolving process. Don't currently, correct me if I'm wrong, Mike, have anything in place to ask about people traveling from out of state, from high-risk states, to do the additional screening with those type of questions, but that may come up. I don't know if you want to add anything on that, Mike.
At this point, no. If we were in Pennsylvania, I would say absolutely. Pennsylvania,
Yep.
their health department. If you were going to go up to Pennsylvania for a practice, you're going to have to quarantine for 14 days before you practice or whatever. But no, Maryland doesn't have that right now. I also noticed there, Tina, and I apologize if I didn't say that about that it's all people. But yes, this applies. This is not just athletes. This is everybody who is there with your practice or with your training needs to go through this and needs to go through this every time, every session that you've got. Applies to everyone. Okay, so let's just do a quick question here. Which of these, if you could again put it in the screening, or I mean this in the chat rather, put it in the chat. Which of the sentences that are here are true? Okay, just looking at the flow there.
For the most part, yeah, we're getting the
Yep. So
correct
if anybody
answers.
hadn't seen the pattern there, yeah, B, D, and E are true. A is not true because they have to answer all 4 questions no. And again, with the caveat that if it's a chronic condition they're dealing with, then that still counts as a no. And then also the C was one that's false. Not just athletes and partners, everybody needs to be screened. So.
Yeah, one other thing here, Katie had made the point there about B with the temperature of 100.4 or greater. If people were wearing a hat, or we had an incident where at one of our golf qualifying competitions that our medical person came and had the heat blasting onto her car. When she was first checked for her temperature, it was high. We waited 5 minutes after she was out of her car and cooled down from the heat in her car. It was fine. So again, just want to reiterate that point.
Yeah. And again, talk with your area director or your area leadership. They may already have a group of folks to do the screening. In most cases, I think almost every area, not every, but almost every area did some sport in the summer or fall. And so they have some experience with that. Also, whether you're using the thermometers that we're providing to each area or new ones that you got, you have to get some little experience playing with the thermometer. Some of them are a little touchy and such. So again, that all goes into that planning that we were talking about. So here, don't worry about the phase 1, phase 2. We're going to deal with that directly with the areas. Right now, every area leadership, that is, everybody is in phase 1, and we'll go forward. We'll factor in a number of things on whether it can move up. Again, a reminder that it's whichever is most restrictive. Special Olympics Maryland headquarters, along with your area leadership, will determine when a local program, when an area can move. And again, this is decided on an area by area basis. Right now, everybody's at phase 1. In the fall, there were some, I don't know, it might have been a third to a half of them of the areas were in phase 2 and the others were in phase 1. So it's going to vary. Again, if there's a failed screening, this is redundant with the video, but if they answer one of the questions as yes, or have the high temperature, separate them and have them go home again. That's why the advantage of having or doing this as close to, if not in, the parking area, if there's a safe space to do it, can be advantageous and can be helpful. And again, clearance there of if they have symptoms, they have to wait 7 days after they've been symptom-free for 7 days. Or if they tested, or they can get a note from a physician or a medical professional. If they test positive for COVID-19, then the wait is not sufficient. They have to get medical clearance if they actually have tested positive before they can participate again. Okay. There was reference to this in the video as well. There's a new form. This is luckily it's one that for almost everybody, it doesn't expire. That's at least the plan right now. Again, that could change, but the plan is you do it once and you're done. But it is for everyone who's participating, again, not just athletes or partners, everybody, excuse me, that where they're acknowledging that this can be a high-risk situation, or if they're in a high-risk population, which we'll touch on in a moment, that this could be hazardous, and what the cautions are and what the risks are. It also indicates that they're going to behave appropriately in terms of keeping themselves and others safe in the activities, and that they might be asked to leave if they can't adhere to those behaviors. One of those things, that's one of those situations there where we try to be very, very inclusive. This may be a situation where not every athlete or every volunteer is going to be able to participate because they maybe can't modify their behavior as is necessary for the safety precautions. And you're going to need to make a decision based on that. Again, work with your area director. So it's a one-pager. The participant, the athlete, the volunteer, so on down the line signs it, or if they're a minor or they have a guardian, the guardian would sign it. And then those need to be scanned, get them to your area leadership, your area director, or whatever the process is that he or she has to get them into us. We need to get them in at our headquarters, an electronic version of them within a week of the first activity. The one exception in terms of it expiring would be if a person is a minor when they get the first one filled out, and then they turn 18. Once they turn 18, they can sign for themselves. Anybody who, or they, assuming that they don't still have a guardian at that point, they can sign for themselves, and for that reason, they need to. We need to get a new form for them. This is two of the two main pages of the form. There's a third page we'll talk about in a moment. The one on the left lists all those things that they're saying that they understand in terms of a lot of those are behavior issues or behaviors that are expected for everybody. Of those are going to stay at home if they have if they have any symptoms. They're going to keep a 6 foot 2 meter distance. Wear a mask at all times. Other than there's some exceptions to that, but that they will follow that. Won't share towels, so on down the line. Again, read this at your leisure. It's in that booklet that we'll send to you electronically. It's also available to download from the coach resource page as a standalone document. We don't need this page for the ones that you send in. We need this page for each of them. Just its name, phone number, email. And again, this is not a waiver. Nobody's signing a waiver for anything. The Special Olympics waiver, whether it was for an athlete or a volunteer, is already taken care of. This is them acknowledging they understand the risk that's involved with participating at this point in time. If they are able to sign for themselves, they would sign there. If they have a parent or guardian signing for them, that would be signing down here and also providing them the relationship. In many cases, a number of your athletes have already filled these out. A number of your volunteers, a number of your coaches have already filled these out and they are being tracked in GMS, in our computer system. So your area director or your area leadership can access that information and print that out so that you don't have to get a new one for each person if they've already submitted one. You don't have to get a new one for basketball. The third page that I referenced there, and just couldn't fit it on that same screen without it getting too smushed, spells out what a high-risk individual is, or an individual who has a higher risk of having serious challenges or complications if they were to contract COVID. General, people 65 or older or living in a nursing home or long-term care facility. It's been determined that a group home situation falls into that category. So even if they're in a group home in a standalone apartment, it still falls into that category, that they are at a somewhat higher risk for complications, as well as individuals who have these various challenges, health challenges that they've got. We are not banning anybody from participating if they have a health challenge. Certainly, they should make a choice, and there's a reference in one of the videos that we'll see in a moment where they say that they should stay at home. That's changed a bit, and they certainly can participate. We are not telling anybody that they can't participate, but they need to do it fully knowledgeable, and perhaps they should consider participating remotely if they have any concerns with this. But we are not telling anybody, I'm sorry, you have diabetes, you're not going to be able to participate. That is not what we're about on this. Okay. There's also the log that needs to be completed for each practice session or each training session, each activity that you have. Do not make up your own log. The log is available, again, from the coach resource page and within the guide. You can pre-populate it with actually probably all the first 4 columns that are here with the information, so you're not filling it out each time. Once you know who all is typically coming, you can do that, and then fill out the screened and whether they had any signs or symptoms there. But again, no substitutions for that. We do need to get it in. This was a little bit of an issue in the fall. We need to get it at headquarters within a week of each practice session. Please don't hold on to them and collect them. Do get them in, and again, work with your area director on getting stuff on the process that they have to upload it. Again, it's all electronic. You all will keep, or the area will keep, the hard copy, but we do need to get that in within a week. Okay. Fingers crossed, and of course. One more time, sorry, the videos have been a little problematic on occasion.
Preparing the venue to safely welcome Special Olympics participants is vital for return to activity for phases 1 and 2. Arrive early to prepare the space. Start by ensuring the venue is disinfected or sanitized, especially the bathrooms and other high-touch areas. Wear disposable gloves for all tasks in the cleaning process, including the handling of trash. After sanitizing the space, set up signage that reinforces proper hygiene procedures, physical distancing, and wearing personal protective equipment, or PPE. Post signs in easy-to-understand language with visual cues in highly visible locations, like entrances and restrooms. The signs should describe how to stop the spread of germs by properly washing hands, following physical distancing guidelines, and explaining how to properly wear a cloth face covering. Also, make sure hand sanitizer and/or hand washing facilities or stations are available. Lastly, set up a single entry with screening and a single exit area, which means there should be one entrance into the venue and one exit out of the venue that allows participants to be at least 2 meters or 6 feet apart. For more information on Special Olympics Return to Activity Protocol and Safety Guidelines, visit resources.specialolympics.org or consult your local program.
Then also, as part of your package, again, your area director will help you with this. you need to have on site those items there, masks, the thermometers, so on down the line. We've provided to each area 2 thermometers and a box of gloves. The box of gloves may be getting short now, but the areas can then replenish that. We can also help with getting additional materials for your area. All of that is handled through the area director with that. But and again, work with them in almost every case. Almost every area, excuse me, has gone through the process and has some experience with what's happening and can help make that a smoother transition for you. I'm not going to read this to you. I'll summarize it really quickly with face coverings and masks on these 2 slides. For athletes and unified teammates, they need to wear their mask. This is assuming for the moment that there aren't any additional restrictions imposed by the facility that you're at. And I point that out because at some of the ski resorts, they are requiring masks 100% of the time. But check and see, there might be something if you're using a gym or whatever. But for athletes, unified partners, basically the competitors or the people who are participating, need to be wearing their mask throughout the check-in process, when they're arriving, throughout the check-in process, up until the point when they're doing physical activity. Whenever they're not engaged in physical activity, they have to wear their mask. Once they start, so during so I'm sure every one of you as good coaches are doing your warm-ups and your stretches and so on down the line before you do anything with your athletes. Once that all starts, they can take their mask off. And then at the end of the practice, when they're done the activity, put them back on for departure. For coaches and other volunteers, they should be wearing their masks throughout that entire time, unless they are also directly involved with the physical activity. So if you are if you are a coach and you are you're standing in the middle of the court and directing your athletes and partners to dribble balls around the perimeter, you need to have your mask on. You're not involved in the activity. If you are with them dribbling the ball around the court, then you're engaged with the activity and you can take the mask off at that point. But again, this is not an option. It's a requirement for stuff here.
Mike, this is Steve again. We had one question come in regards to masks about any specific requirements of the type of mask.
At this point in time, no, there is any mask, a gaiter, any face covering is okay at this point in time. And I haven't heard anything about changing that. So
yeah, I think one thing just from what I've heard through not really CDC, but other entities,
I understand.
The face shield that doesn't cover your face has been found in some reports to be ineffective. So I would steer clear of those.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. We're talking about a mask something that is up against the skin. Yeah. A face shield would not fall into that category. If you have a special situation because of some unique challenge for the individual, the athlete, whatever, talk to us and we'll work that out. Again, Jeff Abel, many of you know Jeff, is well versed in this and is talking with folks around the country and so on down the line. And he certainly can assist in making a decision in terms of any challenges that are associated with that now. But yeah, okay, thanks. Fingers crossed. This one works.
As a coach, you have a critical role in ensuring the safety of your participants. It is necessary to adapt some of your coaching strategies to lead safe practices under Special Olympics' new Return to Activity guidelines. Before each activity, communicate the need for high-risk individuals to participate at home. And have all participants complete the COVID-19 Participant Code of Conduct and Risk Assessment forms. Forms may be tracked in GMS if the program would like. During practice, it is important to maintain physical distancing of at least 6 feet or 2 meters between all participants. To do this, place markers on the ground to indicate what 6 feet is and have extra volunteers to remind participants to maintain their distance. We know it is difficult, but to ensure the safety of everyone participating, there are no fist bumps, high fives, hugs, or huddles right now during this COVID-19 pandemic. You can still support your friends and teammates by cheering each other on. All participants should come to the activity with their own supplies and cannot share masks, water bottles, towels, or uniforms. In Phase 2, the use of shared equipment is allowed, but should be limited. All equipment will be disinfected between each use. Wear face masks throughout activities, including arrivals and departures. Do not touch the outside of the mask. Do not scratch or touch your face. Masks do not need to be worn during active exercise. However, if sneezing, coughing, or yawning without a face mask on, participants should cover their faces with a tissue or elbow, not their hands, and throw away any tissues and wash their hands immediately. Throughout the activity, use verbal and visual signs to remind participants about hygiene, standard infection prevention, physical distancing, and use of personal protective equipment, or PPE. For more information on Special Olympics Return to Activity protocol and safety guidelines, visit resources.specialolympics.org or consult your local program.
And I did want to acknowledge Maryland was.
As a coach,
Sorry, there we go. Maryland was honored, I guess, to be asked to have our coaches and our athletes participate in those videos that are being used nationwide. I think also up into basically in the English-speaking world. So you saw some familiar faces there, but yeah, they're going all over the country. Additional resources, I mentioned about we showed the links for the 3 webinars that we talked about before. There's social media posts from that hopefully everybody signed up on Twitter or Facebook, etc., and you'll be getting you can get those. SOI is working with the national governing bodies for sport-specific resources in terms of how to handle situations or recommendations related to these protocol. I'm not sure that we have anything specific to basketball at this point in time, but as we have anything, we will provide that. That said, our basketball sports management team has been actively working. We have several of them on the session tonight. Have been actively working to put things together. Melissa will share some basic information about higher level skills that are designed to be challenging and fun for those athletes who would normally be playing on a team. We had some success with that with soccer and with flag football, and I think we'll have some good success here. We also are looking at, and here's some basics with basketball. If you are indoors, okay, as I mentioned before, group size, if we're in phase 1, on the indoor court, limited to 10 participants per basketball court. So even though, you know, it's not okay to have a group of 10 under one basket and another group of 10 under another basket. They can't socially distance, they're going to overlap. Need to keep 1 per court. But if you have multiple courts, that's certainly okay to have additional ones in a larger facility that's there. And again, sharing is not permitted. When you get into phase 2, you can go up to 25. We're limiting that because of just the contained space that's there. So that, and again, it includes everybody that's in there. And one of the challenges may well be having to tell family members or house counselors who aren't also volunteers in your program that they can't stay there and watch. There's just not going to be space within the parameters and the limitations of that are required for basketball or for to operate in this situation. We're hopeful the whole situation will be gone in several months, but until that happens, we need to follow what we've got here. Some areas looking to be creative are looking to potentially have basketball participation outside, where things are a little bit freer. Again, follow the group size and the requirements, keeping one group per basketball court, and then multiple groups need to be on separate courts, but they also need to be physically distant. So example, and this would apply with the indoor, as I was saying, if you have two courts that are literally side by side, like in a middle school gym, having them on two court, having folks going side by side, that's not enough physical distancing. But if you're in other situations where you've got 3 or 4 courts and you can keep them separated, that would be okay. This is where working with your area leadership, taking an assessment or a review of your facility, because they're going to vary significantly, can help make a decision in advance on what possibly can be handled in those situations. The other thing that is noted there also, if you are using having multiple groups, having some type of a barrier, cones or something like that can be helpful, if for no other reason than as a visual marker and a reminder to keep people separated throughout.
Hey, Mike.
Yeah.
Can I just say something real fast? So
Sure.
I know that some courts can be like a regular size court, regulation size court can be split into 2 courts. On a half court can be the side baskets. That does not count as a full court.
Right.
1 full court is the regulation size basketball court. So no more than 10 on there. Even if you can split it into 2 side courts, only 10.
Yeah, so actually an example that might be helpful for folks to think about, since many have been there, Glenelg Country School. You could have, particularly if you have the barrier down or the curtain dropped, you could have 2 groups, they're one on each court that's going parallel to the curtain that's there. They're physically separated, they're far enough apart that would work, but not the smaller courts. Same thing goes, and again, this may seem like common sense, but this is why you want to talk to folks ahead of time and you want to think through this. If you're in an elementary school gym, 10 people may not be possible in there. It's just for those of you who aren't familiar with that, I mean, the courts are what, maybe 2/3 the size of a regulation court, Melissa, if that much. Sometimes they even overlap more than that.
Yeah, a lot of elementary schools, most are a good chunk smaller than the regulation basketball court.
Right. They also tend not to have the peripheral space around the edge of the court as well. So it's just a much more contained space. That's why, again, work with your area leaders. Work with Melissa, I'm sure it would be helpful to give advice and to look through and review what's possible in different situations. It's going to vary facility by facility to a certain degree, but that's why planning ahead of time and looking at it. And again, we also realize, having talked with many areas, getting access to a facility is a little bit challenging in many cases. So just want to have, and this could be something, if you could please use the chat for this, just give some thoughts to what are the implications for basketball, that the requirement that people be socially distant, minimum of 6 feet at all times. What are some of the implications for your basketball program, or how what you can and can't do, what you can and can't teach, or how you might need to adapt? So give some thought there, and just type in a couple things in there. So John, no scrimmages, right? Well, I think it's like somebody has looked at the next slide or the next things that are going to come up. That's great.
I didn't say anything, I promise.
Okay. Cool. So some can't have the whole team together, limited to drills. Yep. let's see, it might be virtual only, as Katie's indicating there. Could some athletes, potentially the 3v3 lower skill players, I'd certainly give that some thought to see if that's feasible, but it may be that they may not be able to participate. So, but yeah, sorry, here we go. Again, can't play defense. These are just some things that Melissa and the SMT came up with. No games. Again, some disappointment that they can't be closer to friends. I know when they were shooting that video there, I'm not going to mention the athlete's name, but an athlete actually got quite upset because they wanted to go and do a high five and shake hands with their friends, and they couldn't do it. And again, that was right at the video shoot, but you need to make some decisions on that. So we talked about social distancing. What about in phase 1? And this may overlap with some of the same things that are there, but what are some implications about when we can't have direct or indirect contact, as is the case in phase 1? What might be some things that would implications of what you may need to do differently or whatever? Okay, Tina, 1 ball per player. That's a good point. No passing, rebounds. Yep. Okay. Yep. Great. So, and again, just to move along here, again, being creative about contact. And again, these are not the be all and end all. These are just some things that came up. Again, no defense. Players having to get their own rebound after each shot. So having 5 people shooting at the basket simultaneously is not going to work. I don't know about you, I could never keep track of which ball goes with which player in that kind of a situation. So no passing, and then others. And then last, just give some thought there to how you could work through or try to train some of these situations or these skills there. Okay. And with that, and Melissa will talk through some situations here, but utilize your fellow coaches here. The coaches, one of the wonderful things with Special Olympics, in almost every case, while certainly you want your team to win or your players to win and excel, almost to a person, you're looking for what's best and what can be done for everybody and looking on how to help. And I've yet to see a coach who would be unwilling to give advice. Sometimes it may be more advice than you want, but, if asking for advice and suggestions, I think you're going to get some good feedback on that. So with that, and Melissa, you want me to continue to click through, correct? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and mute myself.
All right, so real quick, one thing Dave Gibson said for that last slide was use time as pressure, which is a great idea. Since you can't have the person in front, time is a great pressure point too. All right, so you guys have seen this slide literally at every single webinar we have, preseason webinar. At no time in any manner can an athlete or volunteer participate without a valid or current medical or volunteer application. Not allowed. We say this every year, every sport. In no way, shape, or form is that allowed. So you have to please make sure that you have current medicals and volunteer applications for all participants, volunteers, everything. I mentioned these 2 trainings in my previous emails so on December 10th, next Thursday at 6 o'clock, we will have a high-level basketball skills overview. So level 3, 4, and 5 skills that the sports management team created. I will go in depth into explaining all those drills, give you guys a chance to ask any questions, all of that fun stuff. And on Wednesday, January 20th, it's going to be a Q&A with myself, mostly Keith Lampel, who is our head official for basketball. And that's an opportunity to just come in, ask Keith any question about the rules that you have, about the season or whatever with me. But this is really your chance to talk to Keith about any of the rule questions that you have. Both of these will count towards your sport specific coaches trainings. And again, I'll send these links out. There's a registration link in the slides here, but I'll also send out another registration link in the follow-up email. One quick thing with these though, if you do not participate in these, when you're on it, it does not count towards your coach's training certification. So you have to be fully engaged in the training, asking questions, talking, stuff like that to get the credit for the sport specific.
And be there for the duration.
And be there for the duration, yes. So for 2021, since obviously games are not allowed, the sports management team has really stepped up and come up with some high level skills. Since basketball is such a wide range in skill level, we created multiple levels ourselves. So level 1 and level 2, same as previous years, nothing has changed with those. Those are typical level 1 and level 2 skills. Level 3 is for higher 3-on-3 teams, mid to high, and lower 5-on-5. That includes 5-on-5 PDU and the lower unified and traditional 5-on-5 teams. I know that's a very wide range, but we think that they would be able to complete these skills. And if we have a competition, they will be divisioned based off of their scores. So someone that's mid-level 3-on-3 traditional player is not going to be in the same group as a low-level 5-on-5 traditional player if their scores don't match up. If their scores match up, yeah, they're going to be in the same group, but we will base them off of the scores. There's 6 skills created with that, 6 skill stations. Level 4, we had a lot of fun creating these. Justin Hunsinger, I think this was his favorite day. Justin Hunsinger is a Montgomery County athlete. He and the rest of the sports management team that was on this call did a great job at designing these high level skills. We created 6 skill stations for that as well. They're a lot of fun. I got told by a couple athletes that the football and soccer skills are too easy, so we made these a little more difficult. So Baltimore City, watch out. Level 5 is only going to be for phase 2. You can only do level 5 skills in phase 2. These are going to be team skills. We created these. We have like 3 or 4 for 3-on-3 teams. And I think we have up to 6 for 5-on-5 teams. The 3-on-3 teams, you will have 3 people on the court at one time going through the station. 5-on-5, you'll have 5 people on the court at the same time. If you're a unified team and you have partners that want to participate, if you go to level 2, phase 2, obviously, it will be the same as in a game. You'll have 2 partners and 3 athletes on the court to complete the skill stations. So this is just a kind of a next step up that we thought would be fun once, again, phase 2, your area gets into phase 2, if that happens.
Melissa, can you just, I realize there's a lot of stations here. Can you just give an example of a couple of the ones at each level so
Sure.
folks can have a sense? I know that the training that you have, is it next week?
Yeah.
We'll go into much more depth, so.
Yeah, so actually for level 3 and 4, we have a hot shot shooting. There are different spots on the ground that are worth different amount of points. The athlete will shoot the ball, go get their rebound, and keep shooting until I think it's 1 minute. They have a full minute to get as many points as they can. They can go to any spot they want, and they'll keep shooting for that full minute, but they have to get their own rebounds. There's some dribbling ones. There's some for the level 4, especially, there's higher level dribbling, passing, and shooting. In some of them, there's a rebounding one in level 4 that's a little difficult. But I will say that all of these skills will get your athletes in great shape because they're exhausting. I was exhausted just looking at them and creating them. But there's a couple of them that are full court. There's a couple of them that are half court. Most of them are timed. I think it's a minute. So they will constantly be moving for that minute and get in some great shape. That's for sure.
Okay. And then for just one example of a level 5 skill, because again, they're doing it as a team, but we're still maintaining social distancing and no direct contact. Again, phase 2, you can have the indirect contact, but.
Yeah, for level 5, we got to be a little more creative because there's one that I'm really, really excited about where it's a kind of create your own drill where we lay out 5 or 6 different skills that have to be put into it, but you can put them in any order you want. So say one is zigzag through 6 cones, 1 chest pass, a cross court pass, and a jump shot from the elbow. You can put them in any order that you want with any of the athletes. Can do whatever skill they want. So it's up to you guys to be creative and create your own. There's also a dribbling one where it's each person has a different type of dribbling or ball handling that they will perform during the drill. So you as a coach and the athletes get to pick who does which portion of, it's kind of like a relay, who does each portion of the relay.
Okay, great. Okay.
So most of you, if not all of you, right now we have, I think, 113 members of the SOMD basketball Facebook page, which is really exciting. This is obviously brand new this year. We're kind of going off of powerlifting did something similar to this during the fall season because they didn't have competition. So the Facebook page, I will be posting individual workouts for the athletes that they can do at home, whether it's either a written workout or I've met with a couple former college basketball players to record. I recorded workouts that they did for the athletes and partners. So all that will be posted maybe like 1 a week, give or take. But something that the athletes can still do at home. Most of the workouts do not involve a basketball hoop, but they involve obviously basketballs. I know a lot of our athletes don't have access to hoops, and in some counties, they can't even use the outdoor hoops in parks because they got taken down. So this way they can do stuff at home. I mean, it's still gonna be outside, so they'll be a little cold, but it's all right. We'll have some instructional videos up there. I'm gonna create some basketball challenges so that they can call each other out and kind of like ice bucket challenge where like you do it and you call other people out. So it's like, I can make this many layups in a row without missing. Steve, I bet you I can make more than you, kind of thing.
Wow.
And we all know that that's true because it's Steve and, well.
Nope, you're wrong. Wrong again.
So I think that'll be fun for the athletes. And I want them to be able to post videos of themselves doing the workouts as well on the Facebook page so that, you know, show each other that you can still do these workouts even if you're not at practice and if you don't get to have access to these practices. So I'm really excited about the Facebook page. Everything that I post workout wise, the written workouts and the videos will be posted on the coach resource page for basketball as well. Because I know not everyone has a Facebook, obviously. So I want to make sure everyone has access to the workouts. And anyone that has internet can have access to the basketball coach resource page where all of them are going to be posted.
And you'll have the skills, the new skills on the coach resource page as well. Right.
Yes, after the webinar after the coach training on the 10th, I will post that webinar on the coach resource page for everyone to see. It just won't count as a coach training for people that review that later.
Okay. But
when
I mean, you'll have document of
Yes.
guiding them through each of the skills as well.
Yes, I'll have a PowerPoint for each one individually. And when I post something to the coach resource page, I'll send out an email to all coaches saying that it's been posted on the coach resource page and Facebook. So you guys can go take a look at that as well. The virtual training guide is still in the draft phase, but it provides a 9 to 10 week training guide for you to do virtually with your team. Each week is a different skill or topic to go over with them. And it has weekly, what we call competition section, where the athletes can go through a couple of different drills by themselves at home to get that physical activity in of that particular skill that was discussed. Each week in the competition section, there will be 2 levels for the coach to choose which one is better fits their athletes. So there's a high level and a low level. Once this gets sent out, I'll post it on the coach resource page, and I will email it out to all of you as well. So I know this is a little small, but this is a sample of one of the weeks. I believe it's week 3, working on passing. So it talks about, gives you different things that you can talk about. The different types of passes, what the proper technique to pass a basketball is, when to pass and when to dribble, things that you don't always get to talk about in practice, you can do via Zoom. There is a Zoom how-to guide as well in the end of the slides. But you can kind of see in the competition section, there is a high level and a low level for the athletes to work on what was discussed. And then at the end of the guide, if you seen the other virtual training guides that we've done, the resources are at the bottom of the page. Since there's so much information that I put on those basketball pages, I couldn't fit these resources on there. So there is an appendix that shows links to videos and articles about the topics that I put on there for discussion. You can change any of this. These are just guides. You don't have to follow them word for word. You can make it your own. These are just here to help if you want them. We're not expecting everyone to do these. We're not saying that you guys have to. It's there if you want it. Just another resource for you to have.
And we're not going to go through this section here, but this, again, all the stuff on coach certifications and the links for that, the forms, the registration forms, so on down the line are all throughout there. One thing I did want to note as well, and we had some success with this in the fall and summer. If conditions permit, and I would say it would have to be at least in phase 2, and facilities allow, we certainly are looking for opportunities to work with areas to host some small competitions. We're not going to have any large, big thing, even remotely comparable to the state basketball tournament. Nothing like that's going to be happening until we're in phase 3 and things are sort of back to normal. But we had some success in the fall with some soccer, some golf, and some cycling and flag football competitions that were small, maybe 30 athletes, I think was the largest. And then with the additional volunteers and coaches and such, we kept it to the 50 max. We are certainly looking for that, and we can actively help in holding those events. But we, and again, we realize that facilities would be one of the bigger challenges there. But if you have any thoughts, if you have any opportunity there or access to something, please do connect with Melissa or have your area director connect with us. and we can certainly look at what opportunities we can do. We certainly, and that doesn't preclude you from having competitions within your own program, within your practice sessions and such. But we definitely want to the extent that we can, and to the extent that conditions allow, we want to have that opportunity. So.
To kind of piggyback on that, I know, Melissa, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but as you guys, obviously there's a lot of knowledge with you guys as coaches here on this webinar and throughout the state. And again, as Melissa mentioned, these are guides for you to use as resources. As you go through these, you may find some creative additional ideas that works for your athletes and partners that other coaches may be able to implement. So please share those with Melissa so she can give those to other coaches. We've been very successful and have some very creative ideas coming out with flag football, with soccer, as Mike mentioned, with tennis, with snowshoeing. Let us know. We're all in this together to benefit the athletes and partners. So the more interaction and the communication you guys have from your successes and creative ideas, the better we'll all be as a team. So I just want to mention that. Thank you.
And also use me as a reference, I guess you can say. Resource. Thank you.
Yeah.
I mean, I've played basketball since I was 5. I've been coaching for the last 16 years, which seems insane. But so I know a fair amount about basketball. So if you have questions about anything, different drills, anything like that, that you want, or if you want me to come out to a practice, let me know. I'm more than happy to, if I'm available, to come out to your practices, help go over some stuff. If you want to show me your practice plan ahead of time, that's fine too. But I'm here to help you guys with whatever you need this season, as always.
Do you want to give a little plug for the NBA thing on camp on Thursday? I think all these folks would have gotten it, but just in case.
Yeah, so there is an NBA junior, I think it is, online basketball camp. I sent out the registration information to you, I believe, yesterday. You sign up on the app. It's all done on the app. And huge thank you to Mike for switching the British times to Maryland times for us, because that caused some issues last time. But it's just a couple hours of, basketball drills, basketball activity, and some Q&As with some NBA and professional players. So it's a pretty cool experience that I think, if available, the athletes could really enjoy.
With that, any questions? Any other questions that folks may have?
I've been monitoring that. I haven't seen any recently that haven't been addressed, but now is the last call.
Or if anyone wants to raise their hand and ask a question.
And again, as we mentioned, Melissa's there. Reach out to her if you think of a question later. Obviously, reach out through email or phone call with Melissa, and she'll address those as well.
We've sort of done it as we've gone. I want to give a major shout out to the sports management team for basketball. They have really risen to the situation, much as the other sports management teams have as well, and really put a lot of energy and enthusiasm into these new skills, and to create something that our athletes can do when they can't be playing an actual basketball game. So big thank you to those folks. I know that there are several SMT members on the call here, and I really do appreciate everything they do, and appreciate everything that all of our coaches do. I guess the last closing thing before I turn it back to these guys, we've talked through all this stuff. Talk to your area director. We hope most programs are able to do something. either in person or virtually for basketball for the upcoming season. But if you can't, either through concerns for your own safety or safety for your athletes and such, that's okay. But we certainly do hope, that we can have particularly virtual opportunities, and with the free Zoom to 40, you can get Zoom for 40 minutes for free. So as many times as you want. So hopefully we'll have some stuff and activity, and looking forward to seeing that as we go forward.
So before we get to some of these questions, I am working with Don Bewick from St. Mary's County to go down to St. Mary's either one of the next couple of weekends to record some of their athletes going through the new individual skills that we created. Workout ain't kinks, obviously, and there's some scoring opportunities that we haven't been able to create. So we will have video recording of the athletes going through the skill stations for you, as well as the written out version. I know some people are more visual learners, so seeing it done will be a little helpful. So Mike, I want to have you answer this one. Some of the athletes require transportation. Can we drive them in a car with masks? You're muted.
You might want to have kept me muted. In your role as a representative of Special Olympics, no. That said, athletes who are carpooling, not by, so you saw that in the video there was a group of athletes who were carpooling, and they talked about wearing masks during that. That's fine. I mean, but it's not something that's sponsored by, coordinated by, organized by Special Olympics. Once anything like that happens, where we're involved, where you as a coach are picking up athletes, that's where it becomes a problem. If two people on their own, completely separate from Special Olympics, are giving a ride, we can't prevent them from doing that, nor would we. But anything within Special Olympics, so if we were to have a competition somewhere, coordinating a carpool would not be permitted. Basically anything where Special Olympics has the responsibility of putting people together in less than 6 feet of social distancing. We joked with area directors, unless you want to get a stretch limo for each of your programs and have 3 people in it, you can't. But that said, again, we can't prevent 2 families from getting together and carpooling there. We don't advise it. We can't stop that. But you as a coach, any of your volunteers in their capacity as a Special Olympics leader, role, whatever, no, I'm sorry, you can't. And I realize that has a huge impact on the ability of some folks to participate. But that is what it is.
And then another question was about the NBA Junior. I believe it's only through the app. I think you have to have the app on your phone, and there's no way of doing it on the computer, unfortunately. I just went back to the email, and everything points to registering on the app and through the app. So unfortunately, I think it's all done via the app. It's not on the computer. Any other questions?
Yeah, and Tina, you're right on. It's a liability concern on the transportation. So yeah. Okay. I think that's it. So I'll start off with the thank you again thank you everybody. Hope everybody has a happy holiday season coming up. And actually I would ask if and I'm sure Melissa would love this too, If you do have any virtual sessions,
Let me
that
know.
you're doing, let us know. We would love to pop in and observe. We're not going to get in your way, but just would love to see what folks are doing. Our coaches are incredibly creative and would love to see that. Same thing goes in person, but we would want to be careful that we're not kicking you over the 10-person max that we're all in at this point in time. Okay. Steve, Melissa, anything?
No, thank you guys for everything, for joining us today. I know the webinar is a little bit longer than usual, but really appreciate you guys being here and being ready to actually do stuff with your athletes during this crazy time. So thank you guys for everything. And again, I'm here if you need anything.
Great. Okay. Thank you. Oh, Shelley was here. Okay. Sorry, Shelley's been at
quiet this
virtually
time.
every one of these sessions. So good to see you. Thank you, everybody. And Melissa, you need to kill the recording. I don't want to end the session before you do that.